Hello and welcome. I'm Andrea Hill. I will introduce this session in just a moment, but before I do, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping. I'd like each of the fellows here to say hello so you can hear their voices, and then I'd like you to go to that chat box that's either on the right side of your screen or underneath it if you're on a smaller device, and just let us know if you can see and hear us. So guys, can you give them a greeting?
Hi, I'm John. I'm John Kennedy, president of the Jewelers Security Alliance.
Hi, I'm Elliot Atlas. I'm CTO of Virtual Diamond Boutique.
My name is Greg Dutchy Holland. I'm owner of HMH Consultants.
All right, can you guys see us and hear us okay? Susan can, but I'm not sure if anyone else can yet. Hi, Shauna. Excellent. Okay, for everyone logging in now, if you're having a hard time seeing or hearing us and your friends on the session aren't, it's probably a bandwidth problem on your side. You might want to try to join this using a Firefox or a Chrome browser. Those browsers work best. If that still doesn't solve it for you, then do trust that we will be sending you a link to a live recording of this session, so you will be able to get all of the content after the fact. I know that's not as great as solving your problems in real time, but at least you have the confidence you'll get the content. And with that, I would like to get started. It is the top of the hour. So hi, I'm Andrea Hill. I'm the owner of Hill Management Group. And this is another installment in the MJSA webinar series that we have been bringing to you every third Thursday for over 2 years now, and every week since the pandemic began. MJSA opened up the series to non-MJSA members, free to the whole industry, during the pandemic so that we could assist businesses with the full range of business assistance you need to get through this situation whole and healthy in whatever way we can help you do that. Today we are talking about cybercrime and how to protect your business from cyber attack. For reasons that you will hear in a moment, this is more important than ever, and I've invited 3 panelists to help us discuss and understand this topic. So we have John Kennedy, who is the president of the Jewelers Security Alliance. JSA has been interfacing between the jewelry industry and law enforcement and advising the jewelry business for, I don't even know how long. I know you've been with them since '92, John, but how long has the JSA been around? Like 100 years?
1883.
I knew it was a long time.
That's a ways. I wasn't here then, though.
Good to know. So John is joining us, bringing that really rich industry perspective. Dutchy is coming to us from London. So John's in Connecticut. Dutchy's coming to us from London. He owns HMH Consulting. They do both physical and cybersecurity, which I understand is quite unusual. Usually industries specialize in one or the other. And he has operations in the UK and in the United States, specifically serving jewelry businesses or having a jewelry industry specialty, among other things, in the United States. And then Elliot Atlas is the Chief Technology Officer for Virtual Diamond Boutique. VDB produces technology solutions, a marketplace, but then a lot of other sales and marketing tools for jewelry businesses to help you do a stronger business using digital tools. So there are full bios of each of them on the landing page when you leave this session, as well as contact information. But I think that gives you a sense of the range of perspective we're bringing to this session. So with that, I'd just kind of like to kick off the conversation and let's see where we go with this thing. And the first thing I would like to do is talk about, I said there's been a rise in cybercrime. Why is that? Why did the pandemic trigger all this new cybercrime? And how much more cybercrime are we seeing?
Well, I mean, the main object of cybercrime in the jewelry industry is to separate the jeweler from his product. And since most stores have been closed, and even most businesses have been closed, there haven't been as many opportunities as there really usually are to separate people from their jewelry and separate people from their merchandise. So I would caution on saying that there was a rise during COVID-19. I would caution on that. And however, one large issue we saw on cybercrime was that a large chain, Claire's stores, it's been publicly reported. It's not a secret. They've talked about it. Claire Stores sells accessory and lower end jewelry to young women, but it has like 3,000 stores. Their systems were penetrated at the end of April, and all of the attempts to buy there by people online, because they were only open online, they were closed physically. So virtually the systems were hacked, and all people's payment information was transferred to the criminals. And this is a little beyond my technical scope, but they were hacked and they went out. So, there's losses there. But in terms of the actual losses during COVID-19, if you're absolutely not open and not doing much, except for those that are online, and they do it mostly exclusively online or usually online, and those folks, a lot of them for reputational interests, are not going to have this become public. So anyway, we'll leave it at that.
So you're saying, you'd caution me against saying cybercrime has accelerated in the jewelry industry during the pandemic, relative to what we know.
Yeah.
But what about
if it's not? But we may not know. I mean,
we may not know.
People may keep it down.
Yeah, the FBI has come out and said that there's been a 350% increase in cybercrime as a whole. They haven't broke it down into what sectors, but they say retail and health are the two main hits so far. But to say it's jewelry specific isn't quite right.
So why is that? Why did the pandemic, what is it about this moment in time that is driving that much more cybercrime? Do we know? And also, do we think it will flatten off when businesses open, or is this a new normal?
From my perspective, I've seen a rise in crime, period, during these times, and cybercrime being one of them. I've seen a lot more petty stuff though than organized stuff, like phishing attempts, right? More random phone calls, trying to fish for information. I started getting more calls. This is Apple. You have a security breach. Like a lot of and emails trying to get people to send them small amounts of money. So I've definitely seen a rise in a lot of what I call the petty cybercrime, not the major hacking that John was talking about, because those typically not publicized, unless it is a public company and they have to report it.
So now I know Elliot's coming to us from Tel Aviv. Are you monitoring this not just in Israel, but around the world? You're saying you're seeing an increase in this?
Yes, from what I've seen, absolutely. Mainly in the United States and Israel and some of the markets that we work in. But absolutely, I've seen it in our own company where our employees have been hit with phishing attempts. I've heard it from customers. And phishing attempts are very hard to prevent, right? Because you need to have an eye for them. I've seen a lot of people fall for these phishing attempts, whether it's via email or via phone call. And at the end of the day, what they're really trying to steal is cyber type stuff, right? Because they're on the phone, they're on email, they're not trying to steal physical, they're trying to steal your credit card information, any personal identifiable information that they can then use to try to get your records and ultimately, right, money, right? Your credit card info or something, or maybe like IDs or something that they can sell. So I think people are getting desperate, and because when people get desperate, desperate things happen. And a lot of free time at home too.
So that's, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, with everyone now being out of work, it's not Russia that you're facing for the cybercrime. It's not the big states. You're now looking at individuals with a computer that don't have any money. So anyone can take a YouTube course or, Google how to hack and then start in the basics. They're now going to go after low-hanging fruit, which is basic retail. Anyone they see down the high street, anyone with an e-commerce site, the domains, that's now going to be their key issue. If you're closed and they can't come in, why not go to you online?
So that's kind of a nice segue to talk about what kinds of cybercrime are happening for the businesses in our audience. It's mostly small businesses, small being anything less than 100 employees. That would be most of the people participating. And they have a website and they have a business information, some kind of a business operating system. Like, what kinds of cybercrime are they likely to encounter? Elliot, you mentioned phishing. I think people have a hard time knowing what's the difference between like a phishing scam, what's hacking, what's social engineering. They hear about social engineering scams. I think that's confusing to people. So what kinds of cybercrime are they likely to encounter?
I think phishing scams are the number one throughout the world. You agree, Elliot?
Yeah, that's the ones I'm like. I don't see ransom too often. Right, I've heard about them. I've never experienced them myself. I think it requires a higher level of sophistication. Right, phishing is very easy. Anybody can open up a free email account. They can write anybody's name on it, and they can send emails out. Right, and so it's like if someone is in a certain place and they're getting an email that's worded from their boss, right? They might do something, and the way that I tell all my colleagues and employees and friends is like, just take that extra second to look at the from address, not the from name, right? If you ever get something with spelling mistakes, right? If it doesn't look professional, right? Like there's some like very obvious tattletale signs when you get, like, to me it's obvious, sorry, that when you get a phishing email.
The spelling mistakes might be genuinely if they're from me.
I even, like I'll tell you a little story. Like my brother-in-law, he got a call supposedly from the IRS, and they knew everything about him. And they said that you owe us money. This is a known scam, right? Like it's happened, and the police are gonna come to you right now. And my brother-in-law is a very smart, educated, successful person, and he just freaked out. He got really, really scared, and he couldn't think anymore, right? Like. And he went out and he took money and he transferred it, like, because he was afraid to like go to jail. Like they told you, we know where you're, like, they supposedly they hacked into his phone and they were tracking his GPS and they could tell him where he was going. So they really, really took it to the next level. And he got hit by this. And I know of many stories. This was like maybe a year or two ago. The scheme was very, very popular. So, to me, like, cybercrime is not necessarily just a hacker sitting somewhere in the world, young or old, and trying to break into a bank or to an insurance company, or it's anybody and everybody, right? And it's anything that's not in the physical world, right? It's not like where someone's trying to physically steal something from you in the physical store, but they're trying to steal something from you in a virtual, and you know what? Everybody in COVID was virtual. Right, so now you have a much bigger market out there to go after.
So
there's an actual case.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go on. There's if you look at the Jewelers, I think it's Jewelers Mutual website, there's a settled case. A jeweler got scammed by a phishing email from his accountant asking for $58,500. So he then went to the bank, followed all the necessary legal protocols, wired the money. A week later, the accountant's never heard of this email when they've obviously spoke. He goes to the bank won't refund the money because he's followed all legal protocols. The insurance only paid him back $10,000. So he had a $48,000 lesson.
So the main cases that we see, I agree with Elliot that's the main way that they start coming in. But a lot of times we see with the jewelry firms that the criminals have done prior research on firms, and then they target various firms with emails like that. In other words, they'll go to social media and they'll go elsewhere and they will learn what kind of product this company has. Because a lot of times it's against the manufacturers. They'll go what kind of product they sell. They will learn where they are and as much as they can about them. They may even then follow it up with phone calls with questions to people at the company and try to speak to different people at the company. This is more social engineering in order to find out enough that they will be trusted to send product to them, either pretending to be a customer or an existing customer, pretending to be an existing customer or a new customer. And we don't see too much of the money issue. We see the product issue. To send you high-end watches or to send you high-end gold items or high-end diamond items. I have someone I know very well in the jewelry industry, a diamond guy. And he was a little distracted that day because one of his kids was sick and whatnot. And so he got this email. It seemed to be from his client, a customer, an existing customer. But of course, that email address was slightly off. it was like the Gmail one thing, you know, it was slightly off. And so he sends $50,000 worth of diamonds to someone who is a complete, you know, stranger, and thinking it's a customer, and he loses $50,000 in diamonds, which is uninsured. I mean, that's uninsured. So that's the kind of thing we see. People, criminals using impersonation, both on the phone and email and text, etc., to be someone else, a customer or a potential customer, or even another branch, for example, of that chain, or another branch of a firm. You know, we need this extra product. You pretend that you're the, you know, the shipping guy somewhere. And one of the other big, one of the big techniques that they use is that they want to make sure that they can change on many of these things, change the shipping address for the product. So they will contact the shipping company if they know the tracking number, and they'll say, no, send it here as opposed to there. And then they wind up with the product. We've had many of these, and many of these, mostly against suppliers, and mostly diamond people, frankly, that, you know, 100,000, 150,000, that sort of amount.
Well, and I think what you're saying, John, is one of the things that we need to really keep top of mind in the jewelry industry is that one of the reasons we are targets for theft, whether it's physical or cyber, is because our product is so easily monetized at close to full value. So, I mean, if you're stealing computers or you're stealing stereos or you're stealing shoes or handbags, it's really hard to get the full monetary value for it. So when they steal our product, they are stealing money, aren't they?
They're stealing very high value, very easily transportable goods.
That's right. So
what John was saying earlier about the John was saying earlier about the social engineering. I don't know if you've seen on Facebook where they ask you to find out like your various, you know, porn star names, and you have to answer your mum's maiden name, your first dog's name. It's the ultimate form of social engineering. So if you have a social media that's open, and you know, hackers will look on the dark web for any credentials that you have for sale. You put those two together, you can write your whole profile from there.
Well, in fact, we tell our clients don't ever do social media quizzes. Go buy Cosmo and do the quiz in there if you want, but do not do social media quizzes for that reason.
Yeah, you're giving your security profile away.
Piece by piece, they're patient, aren't they? Won't they just wait while they collect every little bit of data until they've got enough to work with?
Yeah, even your profile, even if you're don't answering those quizzes, just your profile being public is enough to find out a lot of information about you. People make their email, their phone number, you know, everything about their life's public, and every post that they make public. So people can find out a lot about your life, and it's very easy to target you when you're everywhere.
So let's talk about phishing for just a moment longer, and let's talk about what is involved in phishing. Like, how do you know a phishing email when you see them? What's the difference between, like, sometimes people will just put any name on the email account, but the email address is odd. But what about spoofing? It looks like it actually came from the email address of the person sending the email. Like, how should people look at or evaluate these phishing scams to know when they're being targeted? And can you always?
You can't always.
If you have a large transaction, if you have a serious transaction, and each person is going to set this limit for themselves, you better confirm, probably on the phone or in some other way. Now, I know this doesn't work for the people who are major online people. That's what they do. But if you're a retailer out there or a firm that doesn't primarily do things online, you should be checking probably by phone to make sure it's the right order, to make sure it's the right person, and to confirm that the ID of the person that's contacting you is the right person. That's if that happens. So
don't just take
it's not practical if you're Amazon, obviously. But if you're, you know, Mr. Jeweler out there or Miss Jeweler out there with, you're only doing, 5-10 orders online a day, maybe you should call somebody and make sure it's okay.
So don't just trust the inbound communication and keep communicating that way, but say, you know what, I'm going to call back in for the number I have for you and talk to my contact and confirm just to be safe.
Exactly.
That's good advice.
You can always run a phishing campaign to train and educate your staff to the awareness and, you know, the threat level of it. I'm not sure how many people would have ongoing security protocols or this sort of training. I would guess very little from my own experience in the jewelry industry.
Well, I know that we can. I know we do this at the company I manage in Italy. We actually pay a company to regularly target our employees with phishing activities after training them. So we're not trying to like set anybody up for failure. But we told everyone we are going to regularly phish all of our employees around the world, 150 people, and you're going to use this training to resist those phishing attempts. And if you do get phished and you bite, then you're going to get more training. So there are.
That's what we offer as a company. So all of my jewelry clients, we offer the Phishing Campaign. So I'll speak to the manager. I probably shouldn't say this in case anyone else is listening. But we'll build a whole campaign with all the different companies, and we will get every single employee with all their email addresses, their position, and their full names. And we will target the entire company at random intervals. And if anyone does fall and get hooked, it then alerts us as a company. And obviously then the idea is to further educate and train people. We then send the training video for them. It's, you know, a couple of minutes long, and it increases their awareness so they won't perhaps get caught next time.
So what about for our smaller companies on the webinar today that don't have 100 employees or don't need a regular phishing training? Is that kind of training available to them?
Yeah, regardless of how many people you've got. I run it for companies with 4 people up to, I just set one up today for 25 employees.
Because I think it's helpful. Elliot, what about you guys? You have employees all over the globe.
Yeah, so I do trainings for my employees, and we've been targeted many times, right? We're very active on social media, and people know who our CEO is, and they try to pretend to be her, and they go after the lowest level employees that would be scared not to do this when their CEO is asking for this. So I've had to do trainings to all of our employees, all the levels, and reinforcing it. And I think, you know, one of the good things though, like if you do use like G Suite or Microsoft and there's other solutions there, their filters have gotten really good at detecting at least spoofing, right? Spoofing is much harder to do. Phishing is a lot easier to do, right? You know, very quickly those emails get burnt out because they start going to spam and going into quarantine. But anybody can create a new email, and if they're doing it smart, phishing is I don't believe is preventable, you know, and from my knowledge. But spoofing is something that if you use a good firewall or a good email provider, it should be able to identify that even though the email address is supposedly coming from that sender, the IP address, right, the signature that only the person that has access to that domain can really do that. Now, of course, if they hack into your domain, getting a little bit technical here, they could, you know, authorize them to be the real senders, but that's some real major work in hacking and combination of hacking and phishing and spoofing together.
I think if someone's broken into your domain, they're not going to whitewash some emails to get you that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. They'll do ransom, right? They'll do ransom. Yeah.
Gene is Gene is asking, what's the difference between phishing and spoofing? Can one of you guys define spoofing?
Elliot, come on.
I'm not the security expert.
Spoofing is, you know, technically, I mean, how about you, Greg?
Well, to phish is, phishing is primarily designed to catch your credentials, whereas phishing is a clone of a trusted website or an email. Spoofing is someone you would know and they copy that. It would be an individualization rather than a generic one, I think.
The look on both of your faces was, how do I say this in plain English, right? So what I would say from the user side is a spoof is when somebody is using the name and it looks like the email address of somebody you know from your email contact list. So you think you're actually communicating, even when you check the email address looks correct. Yeah. So, and Barry put a nice definition of spoofing up in the comments as well. And it is hard to detect because it looks like it's your actual customer or your actual vendor sending the email. You open up, we regularly tell people, open up the email information box, the sender, the to, the from, the date, and look at the actual email address. In spoofing, it still looks like the correct email address is sending it. So that goes back to what John said. If it smells wrong, even if it looks like it's from somebody you know, get off the email and make the phone call or verify in another way.
We see that people will get a new email address that will have, they'll get for example, getting a Gmail address. It'll be, just to pick out some name in the Marathon Industries, and who would be a jewelry firm, but they will make it marathon@gmail.com or something else like that. Or they will change one letter of Marathon. They will make an O will become an E or something, some misspelling in it that's difficult to detect, or an L instead of an I that your eye may go right by. You might not be able to see it, and they will think, you will think, who looks that carefully at all of what's coming in, or else it'll be in a strange, it won't be a .com, it'll be whatever, God knows what. I mean, any kind of strange ending that it can't possibly be, but you don't pay attention to it. So you got to we regularly at JSA get phishing from all kinds of things. And we just regularly if there's any question, we just get rid of it. If the person really wants to get to us, they will contact us by phone or in some other manner. But, I'd rather risk getting rid of questionable ones than the risk of missing one once in a while,
Well, and that taps into something that is really important. I think people are afraid it's impolite to say, is this really you? I think I'll call you and verify. They're afraid of offending someone. But it really is okay to say, you know what, this is an email. You know how much phishing is going on out here today? I think I'll just call you and confirm this. And then we can talk on email later. Please do that. It's not rude. It's actually prudent.
Or delete. If you really question them, just delete it. Heck with it.
I love
do people pick up the phone anymore? Since COVID, does anyone pick up the phone?
No.
It's all Zoom and email now, isn't it?
So if I just reply to an email, can I get a virus, or do you have to click the link? Because we know that a lot of what people are trying to do is get us to click a link or do something that introduces some malware on our computer, so then they can dig deeper into their cybercrime activity, whatever their goal is. So can you get a virus just from replying to an email, or do you have to click a link?
You cannot get a virus from replying to an email.
Okay.
And clicking on the link, it's not always guaranteed you're going to get a virus, right? If you have proper permissions, right? The operating systems today have become a little bit more secure, and they will prompt you to get permission to install anything on your computer, right? So typically when you click the link, then you're going to get a pop-up. And if you click on that pop-up, then you're in trouble, right? Because then you just gave it permission to do what you wanted. But opening up an email and replying to it, like, you're just opening up the conversation and making it easier for them to phish you, right? But you're not going to get a virus.
So receiving the email itself is not the risk. Replying to the email is not the risk. It's activating something in the email that's the risk.
Yes, they will install something on your computer. Yes.
And Elliot,
yeah, go ahead.
You said earlier, and your email system brings you a certain amount of protection. Is it better to stay with certain types of email systems like, Exchange or Google, or is Yahoo safe? Like, are all of the top tier email systems reasonably secure?
Absolutely. They're all reasonably secure. They have different algorithms that they use to mark stuff. It's actually, I'll be honest with you, in my opinion, they're a little bit too secure even. They're really, really, really trying to go over and beyond to secure their users, because I, as a company that I'm trying to email, legitimately, I have trouble delivering sometimes, because if I use a new domain or if I send too many emails out, and these are people registering for a service, and I'm sending them their credentials, and Outlook is saying, sorry, this is spam. So now I have to work with Microsoft, and I have to work with all these other service providers to make the emails deliver, because they really, really are trying. So I don't know about the small companies, but I know about the big companies, especially Outlook, Exchange, Microsoft, and Google. They're the toughest to deliver to.
Okay.
Right? Because they're trying to protect, right, their users at the end of the day.
So you've got a top line of protection at your email where it's trying to filter out the nefarious emails. Mm-hmm. What's their next level of protection that they should have? And do you need it on both your phone and your computer? Because I know a lot of people have, security, firewalls and malware protection on their computer, but they may not have it on their phone. So what's the next level of protection after the email, so that when you do click a link that you shouldn't, how do you get stopped from completing that connection for an attack?
Again, you have to trusting your source to know where it's from. And if you have doubts, then you should have some sort of antivirus software that will automatically scan any downloads that come through. I have it on my phone and all my systems here. My two intelligence analysts, I'm not the computer wizard in the team, but my two intelligence analysts are really on top of it. They've wrote the software for it. And it scans everything. And the minute it says it's a virus or a possibility, it shuts it down and puts it somewhere else. And why would you go looking for it after that? If you're going to look for something that your computer says is bad news, then it's your own fault.
So Elliot, for your employees, what do you require them to have on their computers for doing VDB business? Like, what's your minimum?
Yeah, so we have a firewall, like my team is trained, right, not to do certain things, right? So I'm trying to think that of all of my employees, we've never had a problem with viruses.
You should knock on something right now.
Yeah, right. We're a technology company, technology team. We know not to go to certain websites. We know not to press buttons. We primarily use Macs, which are harder to install malware and viruses on.
Are they immune? Because
no.
Because John Croston was asking, are Macs also susceptible? And I think that's a common misconception. Oh, if you use a Mac, then that can't happen.
Exactly. Macs used to not be susceptible at all because it wasn't worth attacking them because of the market share was so small. But now that the Mac market share is so big, there are definitely attacks against Macs. But it's tougher because of the operating system and the different security protocols built into that operating system.
Okay.
Yeah.
So firewalls, like a McAfee and Norton, anything like that will do?
Yeah, like an internet security type of package, which would include like a firewall, malware, antivirus scanner. And I believe in the light ones, right? I don't think like you need a really heavy one, but the light ones do the job very, very well. And this is like, in my previous life, I used to fix computers and viruses and malware on personal computers. And the best prevention is education, in my opinion, right? Like again, I should probably knock on wood. I think if you know what not to do and what to do, you don't get viruses, right? Like it's very rarely, like if you're downloading stuff you shouldn't be downloading, you're very susceptible to viruses, right? It's very simple to that. So if you're doing normal good behavior and just thinking and not just, not rushing. Yeah, exactly. It's, and I've seen my parents do it, for example. Like they just click, right? Because, just take your time, read, and it's going to save you a lot of time.
But then you can bring this a professional element, like you're not going to go onto certain, social media sites. You're going to control your employees' access. You're going to have regular scans at work. I always recommend that the people back up their data and have that encrypted at least once a week. So that if you do get a virus, at least your last backup that you can install won't have it, and you'd have that scanned as well. And
depending on your transaction volume, if you're doing transactions online, you really need to be backing up that website every single day, because losing a couple days worth of data can hurt you. It used to be that when people were in the jewelry industry had a website, they weren't doing a lot of transactional activity and they weren't adding a lot of new information. So backing up once a week was okay. But suddenly, in the last 3 months, we have jewelers across the country that are doing transactions every single day on their website, and they haven't caught up with that backup recommendation you're making, Greg. So I think it's important that if you're doing transactions and you're adding new data daily, you have to back up every day. So if something bad does happen, your website can be restored. So that's important.
About the e-commerce side alone has seen an astronomical rise in cybercrime across retail, because they've now worked out how to load a Trojan onto your point of sale device. So unless you're regularly checking that your security provider or your your terminal provider is updating your security, keeping you informed, you know, you're just asking, it's just a time bomb.
So, okay, so that's really important that you're monitoring that. How do you monitor that if you have a private website? And then Elliot, I don't know if you're prepared to speak to this or not, but you guys put software out there as a service to the industry. How do you monitor it on your end to keep your customers safe? And what should they expect of their SaaS partners?
Absolutely. So we secure the servers. Like we spend a lot of time and money on our infrastructure to make sure that it's behind firewalls and it's using secure protocols, and that the data is encrypted at rest. And the big thing is also we try not to store more data than we need. That's one of the first rules with security is don't store anything you don't need. Like if you're going to be doing credit card transactions, we don't store credit card transactions on our servers. We let the credit card experts that are PCI compliant and have all the audits do all this for us, right? So we make sure that we try not to store any personal identifiable information. Yeah,
that's such an important thing. I want to push it out to our attendees about your own credit card behavior. Just like VDB is not storing your credit card information, you really shouldn't be storing your customers' credit card information. Credit card, it puts you at risk of being responsible for your data being stolen and you being accountable for your customers' losses as well. So make sure that all your credit card transactions are taking place out, not inside your website, but tunneling through to the credit card agency. Let the credit card agency do it and collect a credit card every single time. Don't store that credit card and let them just say, use my credit card, unless it's their credit card agency that's giving the credit card information. Like if you want to permission PayPal to offer your information every time you order, fine, but that's the customer deciding that, not you on your website. So make sure your website is using proper credit card behaviors. So because you said that, it was like, they have the same issue. They should not be storing any more information than they should either.
Absolutely. Nobody should store more information than they really need to collect. Collect the bare minimum. If you don't need their address, don't even collect their address, right? Obviously don't collect any sensitive, like social security. The less that you collect, the better for you. Collect only what you really need to do business. And then you need to protect that data, because whatever you collect, you're responsible for. And in order to protect that data, we need to protect our servers so people can't hack them and that there's no vulnerabilities. All the time, there's new vulnerabilities being discovered, so we have to patch our servers to make sure that they're secure. But in my experience, most, like data breaches and theft is happening from employees stealing data. It's whether maybe they took a laptop and it got lost or stolen, or they actually stole the data and sold it. So what we also make sure is that we don't give people access to the data that don't need it. My salespeople don't have access to my customers' data. My developers and dev don't have access to my production data. Only the very, very few people that need access to that particular client's information to support them would have access to that, and only what they need for their particular job. And we do audits to make sure that we're constantly making sure that there's no wrong people having the wrong security access.
So that seems for our customers, for the jewelry industry vendors or retailers that have websites or who are using software as a service, they should be asking their vendors what their security protocols are, right?
Absolutely. Like the third-party vendors that are doing their processing of storing their information. Absolutely.
That should be one of the first questions after this webinar. They should go to their providers, and find out the simple question you should ask: are they monitoring the attacks on their domains? If so, how many are they getting, and what are they doing to circumnavigate these attacks? Because part of the service we offer is to go in, like Elliot said, we would target their websites. So first we would look on the dark web and find any credentials that they have, and we would use that to target the individuals. We'd scan their Facebooks, all their social media, and then we would pick holes as a hacker would, but we do it from an ethical hacking perspective, with full permission, of course. And then we would exploit it as far as possible. And then we would issue a full report. And then obviously if Elliot was, for instance, if Elliot ran the servers, we would work with Elliot to plug these holes before anyone else would.
Yep.
If we don't, then the holes are going to stay. You'll never know that.
Yeah, and for everybody to know, ethical hacking is a type of audit that is done to make sure that your servers are secure and cannot be hacked. So someone like Greg would ethically hack VDB as an example, and then he would give me a report of all the vulnerabilities, and we would work together to actually fix those, and then we would retest them to make sure that they're no longer vulnerable.
Yeah, I think we go twice. I think on average we test the smaller jewelers twice a year, is what we offer, and then we would run, because I don't think jewelers, they're pretty low hanging fruit, if you don't mind me saying, so they're not going to get permanently attacked daily. So once you fix the major holes, the chances are they're going to move on.
So that begs the question. Now, in the physical security world, we always encourage every jewelry business to have a security plan, a written security plan that they review with their employees and they test. Should they have a cyber security plan? John, is this something you guys recommend in the industry at this point?
Yes, I mean, we put out a bulletin, and it's, we've been saying it since the last few years, that people should have a actual protocols, manual, whatever, it can be fairly brief, about their cyber security plan and what they're doing. And they should also have training for their people on a regular basis. I mean, make them sign the thing, make them read it, all that. We think that's very important. Yes.
So do the training about how to resist things like phishing attempts and back that up with a written policy that everybody understands and signs off on. I
mean, it'll be different. I mean, what you're giving to your employees is not your whole
no.
Every protection protocol you have. That's too technical for them. You just, what could they do? What in the real world could they do that could endanger you? And you want them to be able to follow those specific rules about phishing and these other issues that we're talking about.
So in the physical security world, we always tell employees, once somebody's in the shop and they are threatening physical force, it's not time to resist, give them the jewelry. Lives are not replaceable. So, and we also say when to push the button, the alarm button, and when not to, right? So it's the same thing in the phishing world. We tell them, this is how you should handle these situations, when to report it up and when. Okay, that makes sense.
Very nitty gritty. I mean, don't bring a thumb drive into the office and put it into the computer from your house. Don't do things. You shouldn't be doing things like that. You shouldn't be downloading strange software on our office computer. I mean, very basic and things that the people will understand.
Stop watching YouTube videos and get to work. Should be number one.
So are there basic guidelines that we can share with them? Does anyone have a good template of this out? I haven't seen one of a good cybersecurity sort of policy. Is there something we can share?
We have a list of about 12 things or 13 things that would be, not super technical things, but things that apply to employees. And, I can send it to you afterward.
Oh, cool. What I can do is I'll make sure we get it sent out with the email that sends the link to everyone, so everybody can have this list. Make a note because I won't remember.
I'll send it to you.
Now, and there are other ways to secure, like if you're dealing with very, very sensitive data and you're storing your sensitive data, there are ways to put, software on your computer that prevents people from being able to download files, print files, email files.
Yeah.
So if you're in an environment where you are storing a lot of sensitive information on your computers and your servers, and you have employees that are taking these laptops home with them and stuff like that, I would recommend another level of protection, right? Like our laptops are locked at the root level, right? So if you don't have, like if the laptop is off and you can't get into the operating system, right? For example, if and there's different, different levels of data requires different levels of security. So it's very important to evaluate your risk and then make sure that you're mitigating that risk with the appropriate actions, right? And those actions would be very different from store to store, customer to customer, based on their practices and policies and the data at the end of the day that they're storing that is at risk.
See, we've run a simple software solution that does your password management, and it also gives the manager or the owner the ability to give access to individuals. So you know what they're doing on their computer, you know what they're accessing, you know what they can't access. The USB drives will be locked down. And, if the computer's off, then, you'd know where it is at all times. Simple things like that we rolled out. And I think a few of the jewelers are looking at it now simply because they're doing work from home and you don't know what's going on, especially if their internet at home isn't as secure as the one in the office, if they're not running VPNs.
So that's a question people are asking. They want us to address VPN. And does VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network, for those of you who aren't sure, does VPN guarantee you of security or not? Is it inherently a secure application, or what's the purpose of VPN? Because I think that a lot of people misunderstand what VPN is all about. And is it advisable for people whose employees are all, or coworkers are all working from home?
Sure. I mean, we have one for our office. I mean, everybody's working at home since March 13th. And, frankly, we didn't have it before because we wouldn't use sensitive information at home before. But now we're using sensitive information at home. So we have a VPN. I'm assured by our technical people that it's better than nothing. So, but
the VPN protects the data in your office when you're accessing it remotely. It doesn't protect you. Like a lot of people use VPN to really just say, hey, I'm not coming from this IP, I'm coming from that IP. So I look like I'm in America and I can see ABC or CBS or whatever.
How I watch Netflix in Italy. Yeah, I log into my VPN and I can see anything I want to see because it thinks I'm in the United States. Exactly. Now I'm arrested by the Netflix police.
But it doesn't protect you from viruses and malware. Like if you go to a website that has a virus or malware with your VPN on and you approve it to install it, it's not going to protect that. All it's saying is
we've done that. We put these on. Actually, we got everybody a new computer, and we have installed all that stuff on there. And they're supposed to use that computer for business things. I can't totally guarantee all that.
So the
data that they're connecting to from the office is secure, right? And that's the key part about a VPN, and for companies and employees working remotely, is that there won't be data stolen in transmission because you're connecting directly, privately to each other.
But I would just add to that if you're using a VPN, and for instance, if you're doing banking on your phone, I'll always run a VPN, banking on your laptop. But I do recommend not installing the cheap ones. Like, you get the free trials, because although you can pick where apparently, it's encrypted, you won't know where it's encrypted and what countries it goes through. And I know, so if you get the free one, for instance, Nord, it could route through China, it could route through Russia, you just don't know. So for a couple of bucks a month, if you buy one, and then you can run up to 5 items on it, and then you can actually pick where you route your information through. So I would be careful of using a free VPN.
So VPN software, so two approaches to VPN then. I just want to make sure we break this down. The example John shared is that they have sensitive information within the organization. They're not all working in the office together now. The computer network has now gone beyond their walls, and installing a VPN makes it possible to protect the data that's at the main server. And also it forms a trusted network. It says we know who the people are that are communicating within this network. So it makes a trusted network of trusted devices. That's one way to use VPN. And the other way that Greg is describing to use VPN is when you are doing sensitive financial types of data, transactions between your computer or your phone and your institution, that masking your location and that transaction is also another way to protect yourself. But don't use the free VPN solutions. Use the legitimate $29.99 a month VPN solutions that are known to, and at this point, one that's based in your country might be advisable rather than not knowing where the ownership of that VPN lies. Did I do that okay, guys? Did I break it down all right?
Explained it perfectly.
Okay. Carol, I don't know if I could do that again. I can try to write that. I'll run it by these guys first and make sure I got it right. And look, I'm making another note because my Oldheimers is definitely kicking in these days. Okay. So I'm going to peel it back again for a minute. So hackers are trying to disrupt, not hackers, cyber criminals are typically trying to separate jewelers from their merchandise because they can convert it to money. They are most likely to try to do this through some type of phishing activity where they build trust, and the phishing might be an email, might be a phone call, might be a text, where they try to build trust and a sense of relationship, and in the process get a transaction in place. Or it could be, no, I won't go there yet, so that they can get you to ship merchandise to them, and they're not really the them they think you are, and you're never going to get your money. That's probably going to be our predominant type of jewelry theft. But I think we also see a certain amount of jewelry theft attempted right on e-commerce channels, right? Where people are trying to get, you know, this ring that would have cost, you know, $4,800, and they're trying to get that for free. So then on the website, they have to have really good credit card protocols in place so that they're not trying to handle the credit card transaction themselves internally or on their store swiping machine, but instead are using a legitimate PCI compliant credit card transaction so that the credit card companies who are used to protecting you from this kind of theft can catch those faulty transactions. Yeah?
Sounds right.
Okay. And there's not really an army of hackers that are sophisticated enough to break through encrypted passwords for every little small business, right? I mean, if you're going to hire an army of hackers, you're going after Citibank.
I think they're too busy trying to get Trump in for the next election. So you'll be all right for that.
We have seen, I mean, I don't think we've mentioned it, but we have seen a ransomware attack on a jewelry chain, and who eventually paid, I think, 100,000 to have their systems unfrozen. And I mean, we haven't seen it much. I mean, this was the one I know about, but it was definitely a jewelry chain, and they definitely paid. And of the personnel we talked to in we're talking informally. I'm not talking about statements that come out. When we talk to FBI people and others, they say pay the money, because if you don't pay the money, you're screwed. And
that's what I've heard, is that you almost always end up paying.
Yeah, and it's ironic that some of these people who do the ransomware attacks, they say, here, you can check out our credentials. We have reviews that we don't come back a second time. All you have to do, if you pay, you're good. We're not going to come back and get you again.
It's like
it's like, you know, a review of a ransomware person.
That's just horrifying.
And the person didn't come back again. And you know, you can pay 50 or 100,000, or you know, if you have a big company to do all of it, you know, it might cost you $1 million. Who knows what it would cost, because you don't have your data. You know.
Well, and that goes back to a question someone else asked. It's Sarah, I think. She said, well, if I'm doing my backups, but I backed up in, you know, something that already has an infection, some kind of a worm in there, and then I restore it, I've just restored the worm, right? And that is correct, isn't it?
Yeah, but when you restore it, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think if you are following proper protocols and have backups done properly, you probably wouldn't have to pay the ransom, and you can always recover. And when you recover, you take care of whatever holes that you had that you got attacked, because you know how you got attacked. And now you're going to recover to a backup before that attack, or when you're restored, you're going to make sure that you're not open to the entire internet, so they can't get in. There's ways how to deal with that.
So we always tell our customers to maintain 3 monthly backups. So if it's today, I've got the full monthly backup from the end of May, end of April, and end of March. And then 4 weekly backups. So I can go back 3 full months, or I can go back 4 full weeks, and then every single day. And some people tell us they think that's too much, but we're worried about the restore point because of risk of backing up some kind of a worm. So are we going overboard, or is that a good protocol?
Well, you'll laugh if you see it. Like I can roll back to any given point in time, any minute in time.
Okay, you're more paranoid than me. Okay, I feel better.
Like for the last 7 days, I can go back to any minute in time. then I can go for, then I have weekly backups, monthly backups. But up to 7 days, I can go back to, I can type in a time and day that I want to go back to, and it will roll back to exactly where I was at that point in time.
Okay.
But that's because I'm running hundreds of websites for hundreds of customers, right? On really expensive servers, and I can't afford to lose this data, right? Like I put a lot of people out of business, right? If I had my own website, I would probably do what you recommend.
Okay. So multiple restore points is an important part of this, to Sarah's question, for the just in cases.
And to have them encrypted as well.
Yeah.
Encryption, that's really important. So, okay, so let's finish off, because we've like all of a sudden swept through this hour, and it's gone really, for me, it's gone really fast. Hopefully it hasn't been torture for you guys. One of them, maybe Laura, said, I'm worried about how expensive it is to secure my company. So does it have to be, I don't know what expensive means. It means different things to different people. But is it super expensive to do the things that we're talking about?
No.
If she's already got a website with a developer and an internet provider, she should already have half a setup in with her additional contract. It's just a matter of finding out how far her provider takes the security and awareness for her. And if she's then still concerned, I run a proactive security then, so that should take care of everything else. But it's up to her. She has to find out what she's got in place already.
I'm a big believer today for people that are doing their own little thing with managed hosting, where the host is kind of your IT team, and they will do all the updates for you. And when you go with these managed hosts, they provide backup services. They back up your site every day. So if you have like if you're doing Magento, WordPress, Shopify, they provide very, very easy solutions to back up. And if you go with the managed host for they'll help you, right? Like you just send them a ticket, say, hey, I need you to do this, and they'll do that, right? And they'll give you tools to do all that stuff. So the serious companies today realize that these are like, it's standard, right? Just like you said that in physical stores, there's certain security protocols, right? Like there's certain things today that you expect when you get a server from somebody, right? Like if someone gives me a server that I need to manage myself, like that's not good for any Joe Schmo, right? Like that's how you get susceptible to cybercrime. But if you go with a good managed host that maintain their servers and update them and have backup procedures, then you don't have to worry about this stuff. Let the experts worry about it.
Well, and they have a whole team monitoring it. And that kind of goes back to John Crofton's question is, he said how secure is company data stored in the Apple cloud? And then further, does it depend on the provider? John, what we do know from the major cloud providers is that they know they're out of business if they have entire security teams. Apple, I have to be familiar with Apple, even though I'm not an Apple person. A lot of you guys know this. Apple's iCloud, Google Drive, Dropbox, these companies have these intense security teams that are focused constantly on staying ahead of the hackers. Very few companies can afford to constantly be testing their systems and staying ahead of the hackers like these big companies do. I would suggest that today, most people's regular file data, their documents and spreadsheets and things, are almost more secure on the cloud with a major provider than they are in their office behind their own server security protocols, because internal servers tend to not be very well maintained because people don't want to pay the guy to keep coming in and updating everything.
Absolutely. I think two-factor authentication is a big part of that as well.
Yeah.
Without two-factor authentication, if you're using a very easy username and password, someone can get into it. But even if someone's logging into your username and password from somewhere that's you're normally not logging into, they're going to email you and let you know about that every time. And that happens with my employees, right? We use G Suite. If one of my employees logs in from an IP address that they never used before, I get alerted right away to make sure that it's not like someone actually like hacking. But I feel that two-factor authentication is the big differentiator with all those services, and they all provide that, because even if you can hack my username, you're not going to be able to get the phone call for me to confirm that this is the code that I got in.
Were you going to add? Yes, for sure. Greg, were you going to add some? I actually want to carry this point on that Elliot just made, but I was going to ask Greg before. Did you Were you going to like add something to that file thing, or do you disagree with what I said? Because if you do, I should hear it.
No, it's just worth mentioning that, like, how many millions does Microsoft spend on bringing out new software, and every few months they have a bug, they have an issue. So let's not confuse people by saying what we're doing here is going to be a golden blanket. You're going to be secure. We can only make you more secure than the next person. The idea is that you are slightly more protected, slightly more hassle to get to. Therefore, they will leave you alone. All we can do is make you slightly better than the next person, and then hopefully they'll target them instead of you. There is no golden blanket for security here.
That is such an important point. Kind of a downer, but really true. So we're going to wrap up in a minute because we're almost at the top of the hour, and we've been kind of handling these questions in line, but I want to finish off with something that Elliot just said. He was talking about two-factor authentication. If you don't know what two-factor authentication is, you can look it up online. I have an article that explains it in plain English on my blog. This is something that's very important for you to use. We don't have time to explain it right now, but use two-factor authentication so that you can protect it, a second layer of protection for everything you log into. And my final thought is, if you are not using a fully encrypted password protection system in your company, you need one. Use LastPass, use Keeper, use Dashlane or 1Password, one of these systems that gives you fully encrypted passwords and good password hygiene for you and your employees. This will help you more than almost anything to prevent the kinds of intrusions into your system that can happen. Because once people have collected enough information to guess your password, if you change it, they have to start all over again. And if it's fully encrypted, they cannot guess it. If it's your grandmother's maiden name and your dad's first name and your birth year, I guarantee you that's not difficult enough to keep somebody out of your system. But if it's XY124 caps C hyphen apostrophe something else, nobody's going to be able to guess that from doing social engineering or phishing with your account. So get a password manager. So that's all we have time for today. I want to thank so much John Kennedy, president of the Jeweler Security Alliance, for bringing this important jewelry security thought process to the table, and Dutchie, Greg Holland-Merten, who owns HMH Consultants, who is working to help jewelers actively make their systems more secure, and Elliot Atlas, who is the CTO of Virtual Diamond Boutique, who does this work every day, both to protect his own company and also to protect all the jewelry businesses that use their software. So you guys, as one of our attendees said, this was a great conversation. I learned some new things, and I'm just so grateful that all of you participated. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank MJSA.
Yes, and thank you to MJSA for this, for making sure this webinar series keeps happening. We are still free for the rest of the industry through the end of June. We've got some other great sessions. No, it is the end of June. We are done with our free series. You know what this means? It means if you are an MJSA member, you can continue to attend this series every other week, every other Thursday, for as long as you like for free. And if you're not an MJSA member and you enjoy hanging out with me every week, you should probably get your membership. So, and on that note, I will close. Thanks again, guys, so much for your help. Thanks to our attendees, and see you all later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.